Julian smiles when he learns of the political about-face of his former patron. He knows very well that nothing has changed. Once more, it is a question of playing a role opposite Valenod. The latter has gotten in the good graces of the congregation. He will therefore be the ultras' candidate. For M. de Renal, there is nothing left to do but turn toward those liberals who seemed so formidable to him a few years before. We meet the mayor of Verrières again in the last pages of the novel. He introduces himself pompously as a liberal of the defection, but from his second sentence on, he merely echoes Valenod. Submission to the other is no less absolute when it assumes negative forms. A puppet is no less a puppet when the strings are crossed. With regard to the virtues of opposition, Stendhal does not share in the optimism of a Hegel or of our contemporary rebels. The figure cut by the two businessmen of Verrières was not perfect so long as they both belonged to the same political party. Double mediation demanded M. de Renal's conversion to liberalism. There was a need for symmetry which had not yet been fulfilled, and that final entrechat was needed to bring to a proper end the ballet of Renal Valenod, which was being performed in a corner of the stage all through the red and the black. Julian savors the conversion of M. de Renal as a music lover who sees a melodic theme reappear under a new orchestral disguise. Most men are taken in by the disguises. Stendhal places a smile on Julian's lips so that his readers should not be deceived. He does not want us to be fooled. He wants to turn our attention away from the objects and fix it on the mediator. He wishes to reveal to us the genesis of desire, to teach us to distinguish true freedom from the negative slavery which caricatures it. If we take M. de Renal's liberalism seriously, we are destroying the very essence of the red and the black and reducing a work of genius to the proportions of a Victor Cousin or a Saint Mark Girardin. M. de Renal's conversion is the first act of a political tragicomedy, which excites the enthusiasm of a naive spectator's M. de Renal's conversion is the first act of a political tragicomedy which excites the enthusiasm of naive spectators throughout the 19th century. First, the actors exchange threats, then they exchange roles. They leave the stage and return in a new costume. Behind this perpetually similar but different spectacle, the same opposition continues to exist, becoming ever more empty and yet more ferocious. And internal mediation continues its underground work. The political thinkers of our time are always seeking in Stendhal an echo of their own thoughts. They recreate a revolutionary Stendhal or a reactionary Stendhal according to their own passions. But the shroud is never large enough to cover the corpse. Aragon's Stendhal is no more satisfactory than that of Maurice Barr's or Charles Morris. One line of the writer's own suffices to bring the weak ideological scaffoldings tumbling down into the void. Let me repeat that sentence. So good. One line of the writer's own suffices to bring the weak ideological scaffoldings tumbling down into the void. Quote, as regards extreme parties, end of quote, we read in the preface to Lucien Leuwen. It is always those we have seen most recently which seem the most ridiculous. The youthful Stendhal most certainly leaned toward the Republicans. The mature Stendhal was not lacking in sympathy for the incorruptible Catos who, deaf to Louis Philippe's objurgations, refused to grow rich and are preparing in the shadows a new revolution. But we must not confuse with political affiliation this very particular feeling of sympathy. The problem is discussed at length in Lucien Leuwen, and the position of the later Stendhal, the Stendhal who carries most weight, is in no way ambiguous. We must seek among the austere Republicans whatever is left of nobility in the political arena. Only these Republicans still hope for the destruction of all forms of vanity. They retain the 18th century illusion concerning the excellence of human nature. They have understood neither the revolution nor vanité triste. They do not realize that the most beautiful fruits of ideological thought will always be spoiled by the worm of irrationality. These men of integrity do not have the philosophes' excuse of living before the revolution. Thus they are much less intelligent than Montesquieu, and they are much less amusing. If their hands were free, they would create a regime identical with that which flourishes under Republican Protestant Puritanism in the state of New York. Individual rights would be respected. Prosperity would be assured. But the last refinements of aristocratic existence would disappear. Vanity would take an even baser form than under the constitutional monarchy. Stendhal concludes that it is less distressing to flatter a Talleyrand or even a minister of Louis Philippe's than to pay court, quote, to one's shoemaker, end of quote. Stendhal is an atheist in politics, a fact hard to believe either in his day or in ours. Despite the levity of its manifestations, this atheism is not a frivolous skepticism, but a profound conviction. Stendhal does not evade problems. His point of view is the outcome of a whole life of meditation. But it is a point of view which will never be understood by party-minded people, nor by many other people who unconsciously are influenced by the party spirit. An ambiguous homage is paid to the novelist's thought, which secretly denies its coherence. It is considered impulsive and disconcerting. It is full of whims and paradoxes. The unfortunate writer is lucky if, quote, a double heritage, both aristocratic and popular, end of quote, is not invoked, which would tear him apart. Let us leave to Mérimée the image of a Stendhal dominated by the spirit of contradiction, and we shall understand, perhaps, that Stendhal is accusing us and our time of self-contradiction. As usual, if we are to have a better understanding of the novelist's thought, we should compare it with a later work which will amply justify its perspectives and will make even its more daring aspects seem banal, merely by revealing a more advanced stage of metaphysical desire. In Stendhal's case, we must ask Flaubert to provide us with a key. Although Emma Bovary's desire still belongs to the area of external mediation, Flaubert's universe as a whole, and especially the urban life of the sentimental education, are the result of an internal mediation which is even more extreme than that of Stendhal. Flaubert's mediation exaggerates the characteristics of Stendhalian mediation and draws a caricature of it that is much easier for us to figure out than the original. The environment of the sentimental education is the same as that of the red and the black. Again, the provinces in Paris are opposed to one another, but it is clear that the center of gravity has moved toward Paris, the capital of desire, which increasingly polarizes the vital forces of the nation. Relationships between people remain the same and enable us to measure the progress of internal mediation. M. de la Mole has been replaced by M. d'Ambrose, a liberal who owes his character of rapacious big banker as much to 1830 as to 1794. Mathilde is succeeded by the venal Madame d'Ambrose. Julian Sorel is followed by a whole crowd of young men who come, like him, to conquer the capital. They are less talented but more greedy. Chances of success are not wanting, but everybody wants the most conspicuous position. And the front row can never be stretched far, since it owes its position purely to the inevitably limited attention of the crowd. The number of those who are called increases constantly, but the number of the elect does not. Flaubert's ambitious man never attains the object of his desires. He knows neither the real misery nor the real despair caused by possession and disillusionment. His horizon never grows wider. He is doomed to bitterness, malice, and petty rivalries. Flaubert's novel confirms Stendhal's dire predictions on the future of the bourgeois. The opposition between the ambitious younger men and those who are successful grows even more bitter, although there are no more ultras. The intellectual basis of the oppositions is even more ridiculous and unstable than in Stendhal. If there is a victor in this bourgeois cursus honorum, described in the sentimental education, then it is Martinon, the most insipid of the characters and the biggest schemer, who corresponds, though he is even duller-witted, to little Tombeau of the red and the black. The democratic court, which has replaced that of the monarchy, grows larger, more anonymous, and more unjust. Unfit for true freedom, Flaubert's characters are always attracted by what attracts their fellow men. They can desire only what the others desire. The priority of rivalry over desire inevitably increases the amount of suffering caused by vanity. I'm going to reread that because I'm looking at it. Unfit for true freedom, Flaubert's characters are always attracted by what attracts their fellow men. They can desire only what the others desire. The priority of rivalry over desire inevitably increases the amount of suffering caused by vanity. Flaubert, too, is an atheist in politics. If we make allowance for the differences of time and temperament, his attitude is amazingly similar to that of Stendhal. This spiritual relationship becomes more apparent on reading Tocqueville. The sociologist, too, is immunized against partisan positions, and the best of his work almost succeeds in providing the systematic expression of an historical and political truth which often remains implicit in the great works of the two novelists. I love this concept of an atheist in politics. I find it interesting that René Girard would use a term that is a religious term, because obviously politics and religion, they shouldn't mix. And I would think that a religious purist like René Girard would not conflate the two. I'm going to reread that paragraph. Flaubert, too, was an atheist in politics. If we make allowance for the differences of time and temperament, his attitude is amazingly similar to that of Stendhal. This spiritual relationship becomes more apparent on reading Tocqueville. The sociologist, too, is immunized against partisan positions, and the best of his work almost succeeds in providing the systematic expression of an historical and political truth, which often remains implicit in the great works of the two novelists. It's interesting. So Tocqueville, too, is immunized. He's not an atheist, but he's immunized against partisan positions. The increasing equality, the approach of the mediator in our terms, does not give rise to harmony, but to an even keener rivalry, although this rivalry is the source of considerable material benefits. It also leads to even more considerable spiritual sufferings, for nothing material can appease it. Equality, which alleviates poverty, is in itself good, but it cannot satisfy even those who are keenest in demanding it. It only exasperates their desire. When he emphasizes the vicious circle in which the passion for equality is trapped, Tocqueville reveals an essential aspect of triangular desire. Wow. I'm going to reread that. The increasing equality, the approach of the mediator in our terms, does not give rise to harmony, but to an even keener rivalry. Although this rivalry is the source of considerable material benefits, it also leads to even more considerable spiritual sufferings, for nothing material can appease it. Equality, which alleviates poverty, is in itself good, but it cannot satisfy even those who are keenest in demanding it. It only exasperates their desire. When he emphasizes the vicious circle in which the passion for equality is trapped, Tocqueville reveals an essential aspect of triangular desire. The ontological sickness, we know, always leads its victims towards the solutions that are most likely to aggravate it. God, wow, damn, fuck. I'm going to reread it a little bit. Equality, which alleviates poverty, is in itself good, but it cannot satisfy even those who are keenest in demanding it. It only exasperates their desire. When he emphasizes the vicious circle in which the passion for equality is trapped, Tocqueville reveals an essential aspect of triangular desire. The ontological sickness, we know, always leads its victims toward the solutions that are most likely to aggravate it. Man. The passion for equality is a madness unequaled except by the contrary and symmetrical passion for inequality, which is even more abstract and contributes even more directly to the unhappiness caused by freedom in those who are incapable of accepting it in a manly fashion. Rival ideologies merely reflect both the unhappiness and the incapability. Thus, they result from internal mediation. Rival ideologies owe their power of persuasion only to the secret support the opposing factions lend each other. Fruits of the ontological scission. Their duality reflects It's unhuman geometry, and in return they provide food for the devouring rivalry. Yeah. Stendhal, Flaubert, Tocqueville describe as republican or democratic, an evolution which we today would call totalitarian. As the mediator comes nearer and the concrete differences between men grow smaller, abstract opposition plays an ever larger part in individual and collective existence. All the forces of being are gradually organized into twin structures, whose opposition grows ever more exact. Thus, every human force is braced in a struggle that is as relentless as it is senseless, since no concrete difference or positive value is involved. Totalitarianism is precisely this. The social and political aspects of this phenomenon cannot be distinguished from its personal and private aspects. Totalitarianism exists when all desires have been organized one by one into a general and permanent mobilization of being in the service of nothingness. Balzac often treats very seriously the oppositions he sees around him. Stendhal and Flaubert, on the other hand, always point out their futility. In the work of these two authors, this double structure is embodied in, quote, cerebral love, end of quote. Political struggles, petty rivalries among businessmen and the notables of the provinces. Starting from these particular areas, it is the truly schismatic tendency of romantic and modern society which in each case is demonstrated, but Stendhal and Flaubert did not foresee, and no doubt could not foresee, where this tendency would lead humanity. Double mediation has invaded the growing domain of collective existence and wormed its way into the more intimate depths of the individual soul, until finally it stretches beyond national boundaries and annexes countries, races, and continents. In the heart of a universe where technical progress is wiping away one by one the differences between men, Stendhal and Flaubert underestimated the extent to which triangular desire might expand, perhaps because they lived too early, or perhaps because they did not see clearly its metaphysical nature. Whatever the reason, they did not foresee the at once cataclysmic yet insignificant conflicts of the 20th century. They perceived the grotesque element of the era which was about to begin, but they did not suspect its tragedy.